Your husband is marrying Amanda right now. My mother-in-law's voice dripped with malicious delight through the phone. He won't divorce you or give you a penny. You get nothing. I stood in my kitchen, calmly stirring honey into my morning tea as Margaret continued her gleeful tirade. The sunlight streaming through the windows felt warm on my face, and I couldn't help but smile at the irony of the moment. Thank you for letting me know, I replied softly, taking a sip of my tea. There was a pause on the other end. Clearly, this wasn't the reaction she'd expected. I could almost see her face twisting in confusion. Did you hear what I said? She snapped. David is getting married to Amanda. Right, now, at our family church. You're finished. Yes, I heard you perfectly, Margaret. Is there anything else? My name is Olivia Parker, and at 34, I was listening to my mother-in-law announce my husband's illegal second marriage with all the excitement of a child on Christmas morning. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been 3 steps ahead of their little plan for months. You're taking this rather well, Margaret said suspiciously. Finally realizing your place, are you? David deserves someone young and beautiful like Amanda. Someone from a good family. I glanced at the thick manila envelope sitting on my kitchen counter, the one I'd received from my lawyer yesterday. I suppose we all get what we deserve in the end, I replied. The signs had started appearing 3 months ago. David's late nights at the office became more frequent, his excuses more elaborate. His phone was suddenly password protected, and he started taking calls in another room. But the real red flag was when he insisted I add his mother as a co-signer on our joint account just in case anything happens. That was the moment I knew something was coming. You see, David had always been his mother's perfect son, following her every suggestion, seeking her approval in all things. When we first married 7 years ago, Margaret had been certain I wouldn't last. I wasn't from the right social circle, didn't have the right connections. A simple teacher, she'd sneered at our wedding reception, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. But I wasn't just a teacher. I was my father's daughter, and he hadn't raised me to be naive. As a retired detective, he taught me to trust my instincts and always have a backup plan. So when David started acting suspicious, I started paying attention. It didn't take long to discover the truth. Amanda was Margaret's best friend's daughter, fresh out of college and working as David's new assistant. The same Amanda who'd been at every family dinner for the past 2 months, batting her eyelashes at my husband while Margaret looked on approvingly. I just thought you should know, Margaret continued, her voice sickly sweet. You'll need to be out of the house by next week. David and Amanda will need somewhere to live after all. I took another sip of my tea, savoring the sweetness. That's thoughtful of you to warn me. Well, I'm nothing if not considerate, she preened. Though I doubt you'll find anywhere nice to live on a teacher's salary. Perhaps if you'd been a better wife, things would be different. I thought about the documentation hidden in my study, the photographs, the bank statements, the video footage. I thought about the private investigator's report sitting in my lawyer's office and the official papers that would be served within the hour. You know what, Margaret? You're absolutely right. Things will be different. She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the phone. Finally accepting reality, are you? More than you know, I replied. Give Amanda my congratulations. I'm sure she'll make a lovely bride. I ended the call before Margaret could respond, setting my phone down next to the manila envelope. Inside were copies of everything my lawyer would be serving to David, Margaret, and the family church within the hour. Proof of conspiracy to commit marriage fraud, evidence of attempted financial manipulation, and documentation of every step they'd taken to try to leave me with nothing. The doorbell rang, right on schedule. I opened it to find Jim, my father's old partner and now a private investigator, standing there with his signature grim smile. Everything's in place, he said, handing me a small USB drive. The evidence has been delivered to all relevant parties. Your husband's second wedding should be getting some unexpected guests right about now. I nodded, thinking about the scene that must be unfolding at the church. The police arriving just as David and Amanda prepared to exchange vows. Margaret's face as she realized her perfect plan was falling apart. The guests witnessing it all. Thank you, Jim, I said, pocketing the drive. I couldn't have done this without you. He shook his head. Your father taught you well, kid. Always be prepared. I closed the door and walked back to my kitchen, where my tea was getting cold. My phone was already buzzing with messages. No doubt the news was spreading fast. But I wasn't ready to deal with any of that yet. Instead, I picked up the manila envelope and walked to my study. On my desk sat a framed photo of my father and me at my college graduation. He was smiling proudly, his detective's badge gleaming on his belt. "You were right, Dad," I whispered to the photo. "Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." The chaos unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages and calls, each one more frantic than the last. I let them all go to voicemail, calmly sipping my tea as I imagined the scene at the church. The first text came from my sister-in-law, Emma. "OMG Olivia, the police just stormed into the church. What did you do?" Then from various family friends. "Is it true? Did David really try to commit marriage fraud? Margaret is having a meltdown in front of everyone. The police are questioning Amanda's parents." I smiled, remembering how I'd gathered all the evidence. It had started 3 months ago when I noticed David's strange behavior. Instead of confronting him, I channeled my inner detective, just as my father had taught me. First came the basic surveillance. I hired Jim to follow David and Amanda, documenting their meetings, their intimate dinners, the nights they spent planning their future together. But the real goldmine was Margaret's involvement. My mother-in-law had orchestrated everything. She introduced Amanda to David, arranged for her to get the job as his assistant, and even helped them plan the wedding. What they didn't know was that every meeting they had at her house was recorded, thanks to the security system she'd bragged about installing. The one that backed up all footage to a cloud server that her tech-illiterate self had never properly secured. My phone rang again. This time it was David. After 6 calls in a row, I finally answered. "How could you do this to me?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "You've ruined everything." "I've ruined everything?" I kept my voice level. "That's interesting, coming from the man who just tried to commit marriage fraud." "It wasn't fraud," he protested. "I was going to divorce you eventually. I just needed time to." "To what, David?" "To transfer all our assets. To make sure I was left with nothing. Just like you and your mother planned." There was a telling silence on the other end. "How did you know?" he finally asked, his voice smaller now. "You forget who my father was," I replied. "He taught me to spot a conspiracy from a mile away. You, your mother, and Amanda weren't exactly subtle." I heard commotion in the background, followed by Margaret's shrill voice. "Give me that phone." "You conniving little witch," Margaret spat after grabbing the phone from David. "You've humiliated our entire family. Amanda is devastated." "Fascinating," I replied calmly. "Tell me, Margaret, did you really think I wouldn't find out about the offshore account? The one where you've been helping David hide money for the past 2 months?" Another shocked silence. "Or perhaps we should discuss the fraudulent loan applications you helped him file? The ones with my forged signature?" "You can't prove any of that," she whispered, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Actually, I can. Check your email. I'm sure the police have some questions about those documents too." I heard the sound of heels clicking on church floor tiles, followed by gasps and murmured conversations. Clearly, Margaret was checking her phone. "How did you get these?" she demanded. "Let's just say David isn't the only one who knows how to plan ahead. By the way, you really should change your email password. Using Amanda's birth date was a bit obvious." The evidence was comprehensive, emails between Margaret and Amanda's parents discussing the plan, bank statements showing the money transfers, even recordings of their conversations about how to ensure I wouldn't get any of the assets in the eventual divorce. "The police are very interested in the forged loan documents," I continued. "Fraud charges are serious, Margaret. But I'm sure you knew that when you were practicing my signature." "You've made a terrible mistake," Margaret hissed. "We'll fight this." "Go ahead," I replied. "I'm sure the judge will be very interested in the video footage from your security cameras, especially the conversation where you and David discussed how to transfer assets without my knowledge. The sound quality is excellent, by the way. You really got your money's worth with that system." I could hear David in the background, demanding to know what footage I was talking about. Amanda was crying. Someone was asking about lawyers. "One more thing," I added before hanging up. "You might want to cancel the honeymoon reservations. I don't think David will be traveling anytime soon. His passport has been flagged." I ended the call and walked to my study window, looking out at the garden I planted when we first moved in. David had always complained about the time I spent there, never understanding that it was my refuge, my place to think and plan. The garden had taught me patience, something that had served me well these past 3 months. While they rushed to execute their plan, I'd taken my time, gathering evidence methodically, building an airtight case that would leave them no wiggle room. My phone buzzed with a text from Jim. Police have everything they need. David and Margaret are being taken in for questioning. Need me to come over? No thanks, I replied. I think I'll spend some time in my garden. It's a beautiful day for new beginnings. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Within weeks, David and Margaret were facing multiple fraud charges. Amanda and her family had quickly distanced themselves, claiming they'd been misled about the situation. The perfect plan they'd crafted had crumbled like a house of cards. I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah, as she laid out the final divorce terms. The evidence I gathered had left David with no negotiating power. He's agreed to all our terms, Sarah said, a satisfied smile on her face. Full division of assets, the house stays in your name, and he's responsible for all legal fees. Margaret's also facing separate charges for the forged documents. How's he taking it? I asked, more curious than concerned. Not well, especially since the school board suspended him pending investigation. Turns out they're not fond of principals who commit fraud. I nodded, thinking about the prestigious private school where David worked. His reputation had been everything to him. Another reason Margaret had wanted to handle the divorce quietly. And Margaret? Sarah's smile widened. She's been remarkably quiet since discovering all her security footage was logged as evidence. The country club isn't quite as welcoming to her these days. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, David's sister. Can we meet for coffee? There's something you should know. I met Emma at our usual cafe the next day. Unlike her mother, she'd always been kind to me, though careful to stay neutral in family conflicts. Mom's selling her house, she said without preamble. She can't afford the legal fees, and none of her friends will help. Their reputations, you know. I sipped my latte, remembering all the times Margaret had hosted parties in that house, parading Amanda around while making snide comments about my common background. David's staying with her, Emma continued. Amanda's family threatened to sue them both for dragging their daughter into this mess. It's quite the scandal. And how are you handling it? She looked down at her coffee. I should have warned you. I saw the signs but didn't want to believe Mom would go this far. It's not your fault, I assured her. Your mother made her choices. You know what's ironic? Emma gave a bitter laugh. Mom always said you weren't good enough for our family, but you're the one who outsmarted them all. The following week, I received an unexpected visit from Amanda. She looked younger than I remembered, her confident demeanor replaced by nervous energy. I'm sorry, she blurted out as soon as I opened the door. I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I needed to say it. Margaret, she made it all sound so romantic. A secret wedding, true love conquering all. And the part about leaving me penniless, was that romantic too? She had the grace to look ashamed. I was stupid. I didn't think about you as a real person. Margaret said you were just after David's money, that you trapped him. While plotting to take everything I'd worked for, I finished for her. Quite the fairy tale. Amanda twisted her hands together. My parents are furious. They're making me transfer to a different university to avoid the scandal. I wanted you to know I never meant for things to go this far. I studied her face, seeing not the temptress Margaret had cultivated, but a young woman who'd been manipulated by a master player. Learn from this, I told her. Never let someone else write your story. After she left, I walked through my garden, breathing in the scent of the roses I planted years ago. They'd survived drought, storms, and Margaret's attempts to redesign my garden to be more suitable. Like me, they'd grown stronger through adversity. The final divorce papers arrived on a sunny Tuesday morning. As I signed them, I thought about the day I'd married David, how Margaret had whispered, "You'll never truly be one of us," during our family photos. She'd been right about that, at least. I was never meant to be one of them. Someone who valued appearance over integrity, who confused manipulation with strength. Jim stopped by that evening with a bottle of champagne. Your dad would be proud, he said, raising his glass. He always said you had good instincts. I learned from the best, I replied, thinking of all the times my father had told me to trust my gut, to gather evidence, to be prepared. Later, alone in my study, I opened my father's old case notebook, the one he'd given me when I graduated college. Inside, he'd written, "Remember, sweetheart, justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it just requires patience, preparation, and the courage to stand your ground." I closed the notebook smiling. David and Margaret had underestimated me, seeing only what they wanted to see, a simple teacher they could easily discard. They never understood that I'd been playing a longer game, one where justice was the ultimate prize. My garden was blooming, my home was peaceful, and my future was my own. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about growing stronger, blooming where you're planted, and knowing when to cut away the weeds that try to strangle your growth.